The great Stoic Marcus Aurelius once wrote, quote, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Put another way, every challenge, every mountain, every obstacle standing in the way of your future growth is really an opportunity in disguise. But what if your biggest obstacle, your greatest challenge, the mountain that is standing in the way right now of your own future growth, what if the mountain is actually you?
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm James Robert Lay, founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, where we help financial brands stop losing loans and deposits so that they can continue to level up their digital growth potential. Today's episode is part of the Behind the Cover series, where Audrey Cannata, our operations lead here at the Digital Growth Institute, and I go behind the cover of a book that we've been reading to share insights, to share learnings with you that you can apply on your own journey of growth at your bank, at your credit union, or at your fintech. Today, Audrey and I are going to talk through key insights that we gained from the book, The Mountain Is You, which is a book that Audrey recommended that I read a while ago, and it has truly helped guide me forward along my own journey of growth, both personally as well as professionally. Welcome to the show, Audrey. It is good to share time with you again, especially today going behind the cover.
Yes, and I cannot believe it's taken us so long to do a behind the cover on this book.
This came up in, I think the other day, you and I were talking, and I said, reference The Mountain Is You again. I know I referenced this book a lot when working with financial brand leaders because I see so many times financial brand leaders let self-limiting beliefs hold them back. And this is something that I wrote about in Banking on Change. It's the belief to behavior spectrum. It's our behaviors, 95% of which are behaviors, according to some research coming out of Harvard University, 95% of our behaviors, our actions, our habits run at a subconscious level. That subconscious then is directly connected back to our belief systems. And when you recommended this book, The Mountain Is You, to me, you gave me
Oh, you
such
got it.
a gift. Oh, I got it. I went when you said that we're gonna have this conversation. I was like, I grabbed it off the bookshelf.
Yes.
So this is
Yeah.
such a gift. So thank you for gifting me this book because it helped me see a lot just about my own
Y-
self.
This is I love the way the universe works because this book is another one that just like landed in my lap. And I don't remember if I think I may have shared this with you, but how I discovered this book.
No.
I was on my way back from the DMV. And I'll be honest, I was pissed off because I forgot a piece of paperwork for my renewing my driver's license. So I had to turn back around, drive home. And I was like, I'm going to be in the car another 45 minutes today. This is so irritating. And so before I went too far in the gap, I just pulled up Audible and I was like, let me use this time to my advantage and let's listen to a book. And this book was one of the like recommended books. And I never heard of it before, ever. And I listened to a sample. And I'm telling you, 5 minutes later, I was like, oh my God, this is meant to be. Like, I was meant to find this book. I was meant to forget whatever paper it was that I needed for the DMV.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Immediately, I connected with it.
Well, on the back of the book, it says, "This is a book about self-sabotage." And I know before we hit the record button, I said maybe we could get a copyright strike and open up this episode playing Beastie Boys Sabotage. But
Yeah.
the the mountain is you. The subtitle, Transforming Self-Sabotage into Self-Mastery. And on the back of the book, once again, in the description, it says, "Coexisting but conflicting needs create self-sabotaging behaviors. This is why we resist efforts to change, often until they feel completely futile." And
Yeah.
a lot of what's in this book directly connects with some of the thinking that I shared in Banking on Change, even the allegory of Mount Mutatio. It's like
Oh, yes.
you've got this mountain ahead of you, Mount Mutatio, and Banking on Change, Mutatio being Latin for change or transformation. You have to climb up that mountain to be able to review where you've been, look down to see where you're at, and then look ahead to where you can go forward into the future. And so you see this territory of transformation and you want to start working. And then you have this whole narrative in Banking on Change that you have to go through this epic hero's journey. And then when you reach the territory of transformation, what do you find there? You find another mountain that you have to climb, another
Yep.
obstacle. And that's where there's opportunities, because every obstacle in our path, every mountain becomes an opportunity to climb. It
Yeah.
becomes an opportunity for growth.
Yep.
But, and I'm really wanting to dive into this with you and get your perspective on it. What if the biggest obstacle, which becomes the biggest opportunity for growth, is within our own selves
Oh, it
as
is.
individuals, as
It is.
leaders? So,
Yeah, 100%. It's not the mountain that's the challenge. It's inside.
yeah, and let's dive into this.
Yeah.
Self-sabotage. And I want to
This
open
term
up. Go ahead.
but this term though, I think just needs to be discussed.
Well, it does. We have to provide some clarity. I see a lot of individuals and teams self-sabotage their own digital growth efforts, more probably unconsciously than consciously. So let's get
Yeah.
some clarity into self-sabotage here.
It is the unconscious. And I think, we think of self-sabotage and probably can't help but think like self-harm and it's like negative and you're deliberately doing this to yourself. And really, I think if you just think of self-sabotage as just it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
It's self-preservation. And so you're not many times purposely doing this.
Mhm.
But you're setting things up to prevent you from having to deal with change or make progress or reach success. And so I think it's kind of like these safeguards that you put up. And it could be anything. I mean, it could be professionally, you could self-sabotage from success and opportunity. Why? Because of fear of failure. So you maybe won't take the leap forward. Relationships, personal life. There's so many ways I think we self-sabotage, we cope with our own fears that I don't know. I just think it's interesting to try to surface some of these, just the way we avoid progress.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, I was going to ask you, so
Your serious voice.
yeah, you heard that come in. What's what's a fear, what's an obstacle that's a mountain for you right now?
Well, one big one is independence. Being independent, financially responsible. I have, some of my personal changes is I'm really working towards owning a home,
Mm.
um, and really taking charge financially, really for the first time in my life. And I've talked about this before, but going through a lot of changes these last 4 years, becoming a single mom, and for several of those years, being the only financial provider for my kids and making some crappy financial choices, and also just being stuck with certain situations that I couldn't get out of. Like I don't ever want to feel that way again. Like I want to feel financially safe and independent without relying on anybody else. Just me.
Okay. I'll go ahead and put mine out there too. And I would say it's growth, it's growing this organization, and I didn't have the realization until I confronted this obstacle. Because back on October 4th, 2012, Delina, my wife, came and we had a hard heart to heart. Because at the time the business was growing very quickly.
Yep.
Externally, you would think was having all the success, but I was a complete mess on the inside. And I didn't realize this until about maybe 6 weeks ago. I worked with a friend of mine. His name's Jordan, and he does a lot of somatic work. I had no idea how much I had attached a resistance to growth and growing this business. Like, I know it could be grown, like I know it can be grown. I did not realize how much I was resistant to that because I was storing quote unquote trauma and pain literally in my physical body. And when we went back to that October 4th moment, when Delina said it's the business or the family, you need to make a choice, because I had associated financial success with pain and loss, personal pain and
Lose
loss,
family.
that I was, in more specifically, I was creating pain for the people around me. I was avoiding making decisions to really start to accelerate and grow this to create values for others, like I know that could. So there was a lot of what I would call self-sabotaging behaviors to avoid pain.
And the you use the word associate, and I think that's what we do is we associate these feelings with the result. So for example, me, that the thought of the fear of being completely independent, I failed miserably at that before, really terribly. So now I'm associating
Mm,
being independent, financially independent, as struggling, not making good choices, being miserable, being, sad, like really anxious and sad all the time. And so it's like that for me is kind of, it scared me a little bit, not wanting to do that. I don't want to do that again. And I think you associated business success to a personal loss. When the business is doing great, your personal life is sucking. And
that's a fear.
so
That's a
like
fear. That's a very,
that's a
very real
fear
fear. Yeah,
because you're associating professional success with personal loss.
correct.
And so you don't want to experience that again. You don't
Yeah.
want to go there. So you're doing what's called, and I think you surfaced this immediately when you first read the book, was uprooting.
Yes.
Um, just not taking the step forward, kind of getting there, taking action, following through with something, and then stopping. Oh, nope, let's try something else.
I have so many earmarks in this book, and it was the uprooting that really, I would say, connected and resonated with me the most based upon my own personal experience. And I love the way that this book breaks things down. But the uprooting was, it's like I'd start something, and here's one: guilt of succeeding,
Mhm.
um, fear of failing, downplaying, being busy,
Oh,
so many
yes.
behaviors
Yep.
that we will use to avoid. And I think you opened up with this.
Perfectionism.
Oh, perfectionism is a great one. But we have these behaviors to avoid essentially pain, loss,
Yep.
failure, fear, or
Control. you
yeah,
know the unknown is, there's no control over that, and so we can control what we know, what we're used to. But when you go out into the unknown, essentially you have no control.
that's
That's
super.
scary.
That idea of control, and once again, I think about the work that we do with financial brand leaders when we're guiding them down a path to help them stop losing loans and deposits. They they feel that they're venturing into the unknown because they
Mhm.
haven't gone there before. The behaviors that they have to take, the choices, the decisions that they have to make. It's uncomfortable. It's new territory. There's not a map. And I put their minds at ease. I'm like, listen, I really understand how you feel. I've been where you're at. I've lived that experience. I have transformed my business really 2 times over the last 20 years, maybe even a third time. And we might even be in that third transformation right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
So I totally get it. I totally understand it. And I tell them the good news is I've taken hundreds of organizations down this path before. So this is not uncharted territory for me. I've got you. I'm going to guide you. I've
Yeah.
got your back. So the resistance to change is at such a deep level and that was the whole reason that I wrote Banking on Change, because it's like why is it that 10-15% of organizations that we have worked with over the years actually move forward with courage to apply the recommendations that we provide them with? Why is it that 80, 85, maybe 90%, they might dabble, they might do a little bit, but they stay trapped in the cave of complacency? And it's this book, I think, that really provides a lot of clarity into these resistant behaviors. You mentioned procrastination. Let's circle back around on that, because that is one. We see that time and time again when we provide recommendations and they procrastinate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, golly, when you start to recognize areas that you are procrastinating, this is a great point to gain a little bit of self-awareness. Like, why am I procrastinating?
Mm.
Well, it very well could be that this is a breakthrough. You got to push through. This is your mountain right here. Why are you procrastinating? Um, is it fear? Is it some of the unknown? Um,
Maybe even a
the
deep.
discomfort.
Yeah, I said maybe it's an even deeper question. What are you avoiding? What are you afraid to lose? What are you scared of? They're hard questions. And when you're busy doing, you're stuck in a season of doing, and you're not creating space and time to ask yourself these hard questions and really sit with them, really reflect on them, write through them, think through them, feel them, you're going to do what you have always done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do we transform obstacles into opportunities? How do we find a new path forward here, Audrey? What's the opportunity?
I mean, I think the first step is self-awareness. And really thinking about what you want, not who you think you are right now.
Mm.
But what is it that you want? Think of the mountain, like this is your big purpose, your calling. Like, what is it that you really want to do? And then think about, why am I not doing it? I think there's so many self-limiting beliefs, like, well, that's just not me. I don't do that. Because you've never done it. And that's why we told ourselves that because we haven't done this already, that's just not who we are. But you've got to think about that future person, that future self. What is it that you want to accomplish? Get in that mind state. Be that person. I fake it till you make it. I've said this 100 times being on this podcast. It was terrifying. And I faked it. I faked my level of confidence the first time getting on here. And I faked it the second time and the third time. And I just told myself, you are confident, even though I didn't feel that I was. You do that a few more times. And next thing you know, I have become that person. And so I think, yeah, taking a look around. What are you not doing that you want to be?
Well, and I think about the opportunities that's opening up for you. I know that you have an event that's coming up that you're
Yeah.
speaking at,
And I'm terrified.
and you're terrified. And I think you, and that's why I asked the question, like, what's holding you back right now? And that's why I shared what I'm working with, and I'm gonna circle back around. Once
Yeah.
I worked with Jordan to realize, and we're gonna get into like the somatic, we're gonna get into the body connection here in just a bit.
Yes.
Once I realized, and I didn't realize it until he surfaced it for me, I didn't have the awareness. I call these the 4 A's of transformation. And I see this with leaders. It does start with awareness. You have to see things differently. Then you have to accept that. And when you accept it, that's where the thought patterns begin to change. And so for me, I was like, I need help. Because I had a belief that I'm not a good salesperson. So I got a sales coach. Working with the sales coach, Rick, he's really helped to show me that no, you just need to just be you. You're a helper. I'm a helper. I want to help people.
Yeah.
And so by disconnecting my belief that sales is bad and slimy and
Yeah.
scummy,
Fly me. Yeah.
to where no, I am looking for opportunities to help other people overcome their shortcomings, overcome their self-limiting beliefs. It's made it much easier to really start identifying with my future self. My future self is I'm the best salesperson in the world.
Yeah.
And that now connects back to some of the work of James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits. And I pulled up the quote from James here. It says, improvements are only temporary until they become part of who you are. The goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to learn an instrument. The goal is to become a musician. And so through the work that I've been doing with Rick, the goal is not to become, you know, this world's greatest salesperson. The goal is just to simply make the call, make the connection, do the action, do the habit. And that connects to something else that I think holds a lot of people back is they think that they need more knowledge, more data, more insight, more learning.
To make it, yeah. Make a decision.
But I'm looking at the quote from James Clear. Quote, we often avoid taking action because we think I need to learn more, but the best way to learn is often by taking action.
Well, that's perfectionism. And this book really helped me reframe or understand what perfectionism really is a little bit more. And I think you explained it. It's you're preventing yourself from doing something or completing something
Mm,
because you don't feel that it's good enough. You are scared that it's not going to be good enough. So you don't want to release it out, or you don't want to actually go through with it. And that's why I need to learn more. Wait, I have more questions.
mm,
I need to become an expert here before I do anything, because I'm scared that if it's not perfect, that it's going to come back to me. It's going to make me feel bad. I'm going to look bad. And I've struggled with this so much. Like, I can't tell you how many times I would draft something out and just sit there and sit on it and redraft it and rewrite it, because I was like, oh, what if it's not right? What if it's not good enough?
yeah. Here's the thing though. When you're scared, where do you feel it? And I'm want to surface the point of feeling because I actually read this on the back of the cover when we were starting off. We often resist efforts to change because they feel completely futile. And if I think about the 4 steps for human behavior, for human transformation that I write about in Banking on Change, and you have observed this in real time to the point to where it's like it is so predictable. And I'm
Yeah.
working with leaders and I ask them, okay, here are the 4 steps. Let's break each one of these down. Step number 1, you need to see things differently. And you're going to see things differently through website secret shopping studies. You're going to see where the gaps are. You're going to look and identify some potential growth areas. And when you start to see different, you're going to begin to think differently because you can't unsee what you've seen. Do you agree? Shake the head. They agree. Fantastic. So we're on the same page. When you begin to see different and you think different, I ask them, what's the next logical step? And sometimes you can see the offense on their face and some of the frustration. Well, that's rhetorical, James Robert. I'm gonna act different. And I smile. I'm like, are you? Are you really going to act different? Are you really going to be different? Are you really going to do different? I'm like, well, what do you mean? I go, because there's something that has to happen, and I'll be the first one to step in front of the line. To bridge the gap between thought and action comes down to you got to feel different. Feeling bridges the gap between thought and action. The desire, the feeling, the emotion to do different, to be different, to act different has to be greater than the desire, the feeling, the emotion to maintain the status quo. And it's the feeling that often holds us back as well. It's the negative feeling, it's the negative emotion.
Yeah.
The fear, the uncertainty, the doubt, and maybe even the shame and the guilt. And where do we feel that? It's like when you're scared, where do you feel it?
In your stomach.
Feel it in your gut. Feel it
Your
in your
gut.
stomach. Butterflies.
Oof.
Audrey, I'm not gonna lie. You're taking me back to junior high now. I remember going into junior high, having just this almost every day, like 6th grade, butterflies. I don't know why, you know, but just I felt uncomfortable. Butterflies.
Yeah.
Here's a funny thing though. I feel those same butterflies almost every single time before I take stage and go speak at a conference.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know that, and I'm comfortable talking about it now. And what I tell myself, and I love it. I get excited. Like once I get out and I get going, I'm in my zone. I'm in my like where I belong. But if I let those butterflies hold me back, I know that the butterflies win.
Yeah.
So what about you? Like, how does this whole gut, how does that all play into this? Because there is definitely a physical response
Yes. Yes.
that we have to be mindful of because the gut does act as a second brain.
It does. And I think this is really interesting. And I know we've talked about like, physical change and how our bodies respond. Like our bodies respond physically to change of any type. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. And so, I mean, this is something that I've noticed. And I've told you this earlier this week too.
Yep.
I am going through a lot of personal changes right now, this week in particular. And I feel it in my body. Like I feel it physically. I feel it in my stomach. My body feels tired. But here's the thing. They're all positive changes. It's all really great things and all things that I'm excited about. But my body, I will tell you by the end of this week, like I need kind of a reset. I didn't even go to the gym this morning. You and I were talking before we hit record because my body just felt so fatigued.
Sure.
But I'm positive and I'm optimistic. And so I know that. And I know that that's my body's response. If I didn't know that this was normal, I might be questioning my decisions. Oh, wait, was this the right move to make? Should I have done this? Because I don't feel good about it right now. And that could have easily put a red flag up. Uh-oh, something's not right. Let me pause and stop. But I know that my body's just getting used to that change. And one of the things that this book goes into, it really talks about and I don't know if I can pronounce it correctly, the ENS. Is
Yes.
it enteric
Enteric nervous
nervous system?
system. Yep.
Yeah, it's like a second brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but it only responds to the present moment. And so if we're thinking about like, oh, that's my gut feeling on that, it only responds to what you're doing in the present. So you can't have a gut feeling about something in the future.
It's
That's
actually,
different. And a lot of times we listen to our gut about something in the future and then we shy away from it.
well, I think that's an interesting point. I think I used that vernacular on a recent podcast talking about the pendulum swinging back to human experience, and it's a good point. And what's the difference though? Because that's a that feeling. That's a maybe a better way to frame it. That's a response,
Mhm.
not a feeling. Correct. That's a chemical
Yeah.
response, for
Yep.
lack of a better word, not a feeling. And so, because all of this is separate from the nervous system of brain and spinal cord. So the brain, quote unquote, is even involved. The mind is not even involved. That's why this is the second brain, as they
Mhm.
say. How do we overcome that? How do we overcome? Because once again, if we think about the 4 steps for human transformation: see, think, feel, and then act.
Well,
Because feelings could also be that the desire, feeling, and emotion to do different has to be greater than the desire, feeling, and emotion to stay the same. But at the same time,
yeah,
feeling could be the mountain, quote unquote.
I think that we have to stop projecting onto the future, and assuming that we know the outcome of something, or assuming that we're not going to be good at something, or we can't do that. It's not possible. And that assumption, those self-limiting beliefs, that's where we have to look to see where we might be self-sabotaging.
Mm.
I can tell you that 6 months ago, you know what? Probably 3 months ago, I did not think it was possible at all for me on my single income to purchase a house. That was like, haha, 10 years from now, pipe dream. And so I just put it off for the last couple of years. And you know what? My spending habits reflected that. I told myself that I would not be able to buy a house in the next 10 years, 5 years. And guess what? I acted like it.
Your belief drove your
Um,
behavior.
I believed that. And so I didn't take it seriously. Wasn't saving a whole lot. And then I don't know what shift happened to where it became like a little bit more of a reality. Like, oh, this actually could happen.
You
Like
want
now that I'm logically thinking about it, like I actually could make this happen.
you want to know what happened?
What was what? Oh, I know. Actually, what? You tell
I
me.
remember it to the day. We were talking about your future goals, and you were kind of like, it's like, once again, it was there, but it was a pipe dream. And something came into our field of vision. And I can't remember how or what, but I remember you were at the office, and we were looking on the TV in the conference room, and there
Oh,
was
yeah.
some type of, how did we come across, it was some type of home buying program. And am I,
Yes, you know what it was? It was the first time home buyer because I've owned a home before. And so I assumed that I would not be qualified for FHA loan. But what we found out was if you haven't owned a home in 3 years, which I haven't, that I could qualify for it again.
And so once again, now let's connect the dot.
Mhm.
That moment, that experience helped you see things different. As a result, you begin to think different. More specifically, you begin to feel different. And then as a result of feeling different, your behaviors begin to change. Your actions have transformed. But I
Oh, yeah.
literally can connect it back to that day because I did see a shift and
Yeah.
something transpired from that moment.
Yeah, I mean, the second that my future, my reality switched, it was like I saw things so differently. And I mean, I went into, well, you've seen it. I've been in go mode ever since.
Yep.
Like now that I know that it's a possibility, I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
And now I have become this financial, my financial wellness, I guess,
Hmm.
has become something that I wasn't before. Like I'm becoming the person who can buy a home, who can be financially independent. And that's reflecting in my daily behaviors. My habits are, I've now kind of started to act that way and become that way, which before not so much, because I kind of was in this belief that, "Nah, I'm not that great with money. I'm a single person. I'm just kind of doomed, whatever. So who cares? What's the point?" And that's the way I was living for several years.
Well, this gets back into that quote from James Clear. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is to not buy a home. The goal is to become a homeowner.
Yeah.
And it's the belief that you are a homeowner. I think about, Delia and I, we've worked up plans for our house and have put that on hold. And one of the things she keeps telling me, she goes, I'm living in that home in my mind. That
Yes.
is a huge, huge thing that because we've like gone back and forth about cutting things here and there and, pulling things out. And she's like, no, I'm living in that home in my mind. And that's a very strong emotional feeling for her that's driving that. It's a belief driving behavior. And so as we start to wrap up here, I think there's 2 points touching on resiliency. And that connects back to something that I wrote about in Banking on Change. Once again, you have to care. You have to care for growth. And care is an acronym where the cause has to be greater than the present moment. The future cause has to be greater than the present moment. That's the C, the cause. A, you got to adapt. You got to adapt belief. You got to adapt belief to adapt behavior. R is resiliency. Resiliency is the way forward. It's not going to be easy. I mean, if you kind of
No.
know that, then you can make the mental preparations to build that resiliency. And then the E is it's emotion. It's managing the emotive state because emotion is energy in motion and energy is finite. And one of the questions that we ask is who's on your team? How do you invest your time? And more specifically to this is how do you spend your energy? Because are you involved in activities around people that are providing you, increasing your energy, or are you around energy vampires that are draining your energy?
Yep.
And so I think, for example, coming back to this, my own obstacles that we've been talking about here, making calls, calling people, you know, pick up the phone. There's a physical resistance to that right now because it is not natural to me, but I'm operating from my future self. I know that I'm going to have to go through a period of pain and discomfort in the short term, which is
Yep.
why and it's just interesting. Only looking back in reflection, only in hindsight can I connect these dots. Because my North Star to start this year was to be disciplined to do difficult things.
Yeah.
And I had no idea how that
Wow.
would show up. And here we are. halfway through 2024, picking up the phone, doing things that I've never done in 21 years of business. And it's requiring discipline to do difficult things. Now, some people are
Yes.
listening, like, dude, I do that all the time. Well, we all have these
Yeah.
mountains. We all have these obstacles, which are really opportunities. So, what's your recommendation as we wrap up? How can someone who is watching or listening be able to transform mountains, obstacles into opportunities, specifically when we know, you and I know, more times than not, the mountain is you.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that this book really helped me understand and really influenced me. I for many years, I climbed a lot of really tough mountains, a lot of challenging mountains. But what I realized was those mountains, those obstacles, those challenges that I overcame, those were put in my path by some sort of external event or
Mm,
person. So I had, crap, for lack of better words, dumped on me. And it was like, you climb the mountain or you crumble. Like that's the two choices. And so for me, it was a lot easier. Like, okay, I got this. Like you throw a mountain in my path, I got it. I'm gonna conquer it. What I did not realize though, or what this made me understand a little bit more and think about was, what about when nobody's putting the mountain in your path? Like what if there's no issues, no external forces, no challenges? What can you do? What mountain can you put in your path? Like what mountain can you say, you know what? I'm going to climb that mountain. I'm going to do this, because that is the ultimate sign of, like you said, discipline, growth, because you don't have to climb this mountain. When you put your own mountain in your way, you don't have to climb it. No one's forcing you to. The only consequence of not climbing it is, well, just yourself and being right where you are, no, not moving. And so I think when you can really pinpoint and think about, where is there a mountain in my life that I want to climb? Like, what is it that I want to do? And then you commit to that and you climb it and you make it to the top. I think that is when, the reward is so much sweeter, because you made this up. Nobody forced you to do this.
that is that's so well put, because I think a lot of times we look or perceive mountains, roadblocks, obstacles as an external circumstance. But in reflection on my own journey, I would say many times, if not all of those times, that's life happening for you.
Yeah.
Those have all been opportunities to level up and grow. But I know right now there's a mountain that both of us are climbing. It's a decision that we've both made.
Oh, yeah. This was a hard one.
And yeah, I mean, for me, it was December. And that's the thing. I remember dates very, very vividly. December
Yeah.
13th, 2023. Went out with some friends. Um, Went to dinner, had a couple of old fashions. Love a good old fashioned. Love scotch, love whiskey. And then after that, we met up with some other friends at a local bar in the neighborhood. Had three more old fashions. That was on Saturday night. Woke up the next day, Sunday. Oof, man. Felt horrible. Woke up the next day, Monday. Oof. I'm still feeling bad. Woke up on Tuesday. I'm still like, I can't. And the question that I vividly remember asking myself, laying in bed, waking up, feeling that way, is my future self going to thank me for doing what I'm doing? Or would my future self thank me for saying, you know what? I need to re examine my relationship with alcohol. And
Yeah.
I did not realize how long I had not gone with not having a drink. Like it had become part of who I was. probably all the way back to when I was like 17 years old. So 17 to 42, what is that, 25 years?
Yep.
And so I made a conscious choice and decision to say, I'm not going to drink for a week. And then a week became a month became 90 days, 90 days became half a year. Then I had like a glass of wine, a little bit of whiskey. And I was like, you know what? I was feeling far better without. And you and I
Yes.
had you and I were in constant dialogue about this.
Oh yeah.
And I know you had
We were.
dabbled with it yourself,
Yeah.
sobriety.
Yeah.
And then you went out one night yourself and you had a interesting evening.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this was something that it's interesting the way this happened and the way this lined up for both of us, because I think for like the better part of last year, we were both dancing around this idea,
Yeah.
but like internally, and I don't think we ever really talked
We
about it out
didn't.
loud until one day, like, oh, I think it was right after like the first time I did. So last year I did like 2 weeks off, and then I did 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did like 45 days. But after each one of those, periods off, I would find myself eventually facing the same issue, like overdoing it, feeling like crap. And then everything around me suffered.
Yes.
And so I finally brought it up to you one day because I just was like, had enough. And we just both kind of connected that that was something that we'd both kind of silently been thinking about. And so, yeah, after you did your 100 days. So I did my little short little sprints. And then back in April 8th, I was like, you know what, James Robert? I'm gonna see you at 100 days. I'm gonna meet your 100 days that you're doing,
I remember.
um, and go from there. Yeah, I was like, challenge accepted.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm probably at 110 days, 108 days now, and it became one of those things where when I looked around at like all of my goals that I had, and what was a common denominator kind of standing in my way,
Mm,
and I realized it was alcohol. Like,
yeah.
what's preventing you? You would have this, and this you could achieve if you just cut that out. And like, is that so hard? You know what? And I just told myself, like, all right, you want to be a badass? You want to accomplish all these goals? You want to do all this shit? Work hard, sacrifice, be disciplined. And so I just tell myself, like, I'm not in the time of my life where I'm going to go out and party. That's not where I'm at. I haven't earned that yet. I'm trying to work now. And so that was a tough thing to cut because I'm a very social person. So I have more opportunities to go to dinner or to go hang out with friends. And it was like more often than not, there was alcohol involved. Um, and
Yeah.
so I was like, you know what? You're just going to have to get real. This is a challenge.
And I think
That was tough.
though it'll be interesting how that continues to unfold, because from my experience now pushing almost 7 8 months, I don't miss it. B, people ask me all the time, is it hard, is it difficult? No,
It's
actually
not.
it's not. And I have my mental clarity is at the highest it's ever been. um there's a spiritual component to this as well, I
Mhm.
believe. I'm more connected with myself than ever before. um I mean, even the other day, I was speaking at a conference, and someone we both know, the very first thing that she said to me, because I've been public about this and speaking more
Yeah.
about this, and probably will continue to the more that I learn this, and we'll just call it digital addiction. Um,
Yeah.
I think are
That's a
two.
coping mechanism. This is
Oh,
the self-sabotage we're talking about.
it really is, and I think
Yeah.
like how
So why is it that we're doing this? What's
well,
the issue?
and I the phones, the cell phones, it's the Armin van Buren song. Maybe we should do a whole episode on this. The you know Everyone's connected but no one's connected. The human element
Yeah.
has long been missing. I'm quoting Armin van Buren on this one. And I know for me, it's like I would go to my phone because I was lonely,
Yep.
didn't want to, didn't want to be by
Be with
myself,
yourself.
be with myself. Exactly.
Yeah, that was alcohol for me.
And what are we
It
afraid
made me
of?
more comfortable in my skin. Yeah.
Yeah. What are we afraid of? And when we start to do some of this, I'm not going to say hard work, this deeper work, we really, I think, unlock new levels of growth that will bear fruit both personally and professionally. So
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I know
Wow. That's good.
we've uncovered, we've unpacked a
We
lot,
went
we've
deep.
shared a
We
lot.
went deep.
We did go deep, but
But this is an important, I mean, this is really like major points and I think both of our lives that we're like in real time learning together and working towards
sure.
together. And I'm so grateful for that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for just having you here and having this dialogue and being able to share some of our common struggles and what we're doing to overcome those.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I appreciate it a lot.
Well, and that's the thing. If you're watching or listening and you've been dabbling in, some of these areas and you want to continue to elevate and level up and optimize your life, don't think that you have to do this alone. Um, we're doing this. We know
Mhm.
others who are doing this. And with that, I'm just gonna, you know what? Send us a text 415-579-3002 and just say, hey, I want to level up with y'all. I want to grow with y'all. And you don't have to do this alone. So keep
Yeah.
listening, keep watching, because we're going to continue to share more on some of these other areas that really do impact the future growth potential for yourself as a financial brand leader, for your team, and for your organization as well. So thank you for sharing the perspective here today and going behind the cover together, Audrey.
This was good.
As always, and until next time, be well, do good, be the light.